There are so many rumors and tales surrounding Hitler's lost treasure, a hoard of Nazi gold, currency, and artwork yet to be discovered. These stories stem from the billions of dollars in state reserves and personal assets plundered from countries occupied by Nazi Germany as it advanced across Europe in the early stages of World War II. But what happened to this cache of treasure? Was it placed aboard a submarine and smuggled off to Argentina? Was it loaded onto an armed train that vanished into an underground rail network known as Project Reich in the Owl Mountains of Poland? Or was it simply dumped into Lake Toplitz in Austria by members of the Nazi Party with the intention of returning to recover it after the war ended? This video answers that question, or at least reveals what happened to approximately 200 tons of the looted treasure. Because in the final weeks of the Second World War, and as American troops entered a small German mining town, a U.S. Army private heard an extraordinary rumor. Somewhere beneath them, hidden inside miles of dark underground tunnels, was the missing fortune of the Third Reich. Gold bars, foreign currency, priceless works of art, and suitcases filled with valuables taken from people who would never return to claim them. Now, at first, neither General George Patton nor his officer staff of the 90th Infantry Division took this absurd report of a Nazi treasure stockpile seriously. But more than 2,000 feet below the surface, behind a sealed wall, the Americans were about to discover something beyond imagination. And the first clue came from two women walking along a road. By April of 1945, Nazi Germany was collapsing. American and British armies were advancing from the west. Soviet forces were closing in from the east. German cities were being destroyed. Government offices were evacuating. And the authority of the Third Reich was beginning to disintegrate. But as the Allies moved deeper into Germany, they faced a mystery. Where was the country's money? For most of the war, Germany's gold reserves had been kept inside the Reichsbank in Berlin. But there was also gold stolen from the central banks of countries the Nazis had occupied. And mixed among them were valuables taken from millions of victims of Nazi persecution. But when Allied forces began closing in on Berlin, much of the Reichsbank treasure was no longer there. On February 3, 1945, more than 900 American B-17 bombers attacked Berlin. The raid badly damaged the Reichsbank building and destroyed much of its currency printing operation. Walter Funk, the president of the Reichsbank and Nazi Germany's Minister of Economics, now faced a serious problem. And so a decision was made. The Reichsbank's gold, currency, and other assets would be removed from Berlin and hidden somewhere far from the fighting. The location chosen was the Kaiserota potassium mine near the town of Merkers, roughly 200 miles southwest of Berlin. The mine extended through more than 35 miles of underground tunnels, with multiple entrances scattered across the surrounding countryside. Its deepest chambers were more than 2,000 feet below ground. Therefore, they were protected from air raids, difficult to enter without electricity, and almost impossible to search without the cooperation of someone who understood the mine. It was an ideal hiding place. Now, in February and March of 1945, shipments began arriving from Berlin. Gold bullion was packed into bags and boxes. Currency was loaded into containers. Rail cars carried paintings, sculptures, and other works from some of Germany's most important museums. Local workers and displaced foreign laborers helped unload the trains and move the shipments into the mine. Much of the material was lowered through the shafts and carried through the tunnels to designated storage rooms. One chamber in particular became the main financial vault, while other tunnels were filled with crates of artwork. The mine also received shipments controlled by the SS. Now these were different because they included watches, rings, jewelry, coins, silverware, and most notably, dental gold taken from prisoners and concentration camp victims. Then, before the Germans could remove it, the American army arrived. On March 22, 1945, elements of General George Patton's Third Army crossed the Rhine. What followed was one of the fastest American advances of the war. You see, Patton's forces drove into central Germany, capturing towns, factories, and military installations faster than German authorities could evacuate them. And just before noon on April 4th, soldiers of the 90th Infantry Division entered Merkers. Of course, the town offered little resistance. To the American soldiers, it appeared to be just another mining community in a country filled with mines. Early on the morning of April 6th, 2 American military policemen were guarding a road near the village of Keiselbach. They saw 2 women approaching and stopped them. The women were French displaced persons. One was pregnant, and the other was accompanying her to visit a midwife. After questioning, an American driver was assigned to take the women back towards Merkers. As they passed the Kaiserota mine, the driver casually asked what kind of mine it was. The answer changed everything. You see, the women told him that the German gold reserve had been placed inside. They said valuable artwork had also been deposited there. The soldier was Private First Class Richard C. Moots. And when he reported this news to his superiors, no one believed him. Fascinating story, right? So where did it come from? Where did this story come from? Well, there was a report covering what happened from April 9th to April 22nd, 1945. And it's simply called the Merkers Report. It's available in the U.S. National Archives. If you haven't checked out the National Archives website, I strongly recommend it. And I spend hours going through this stuff. So this is a special report prepared for and written for Major General Robert W. Crawford. And we're going to fast forward to how was this discovered? On April 6th, 1945. So the command post for the 90th Infantry Division, it was located in Keiselbach. And Keiselbach's between 2 and 3 kilometers from Merkers, which is less than 2 miles. It's super close. So at 8:45 that morning on April 6th, 2 MPs, PFC Harman and PFC Klein, stopped 2 French women that were entering Keiselbach from Merkers. One of which was pregnant, and the other was accompanying her to get medical assistance from a midwife in Keiselbach. And they were released. These women aren't doing any harm, but they were sent back to Merkers by a private Moots. He was the driver of the Jeep that was taking them back to Merkers. He saw the Kaiserota potassium salt mine and asked the women what sort of mine it was. That's when these 2 women dropped the bomb. Quote, "It was the mine in which the German gold reserve and valuable property of the National Art Museum in Berlin had been deposited." Goes on further to say the women stated the gold was stored 700 meters deep, over 2,000 feet deep in the mine. Earlier, I said in the video, nobody believed this private Moots. Now, keep in mind, Moots was driving these women at about 8:45, 9 a.m. in the morning, okay? And then the report says, Lieutenant Colonel Russell proceeded immediately to the Kaiserota mine at 1300 hours. That's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. If you heard a story about a massive gold treasure less than 2 miles away, why would you wait 4 hours, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.? Why would you wait 4 hours before driving less than 2 miles to go check it out? That to me shows nobody believed this guy. This Lieutenant Colonel Russell decides to roll in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and start asking some questions. It took him 4 hours to go 1.5 miles. I don't think so. I truly believe the stories that no one believed this driver. I think that's great. So these are the details that I pick up from this report. Russell went to the mine and confronted the mine officials, and they admitted that gold and artwork were underground. The rumor was becoming a fact. They had apparently captured a national treasury, but it was hidden inside a mine with numerous entrances spread over a wide area. The 712th Tank Battalion was ordered to secure the site. The following morning, American officers prepared to go underground. More than 2,000 feet beneath the German countryside, the Americans stepped into a network of tunnels large enough for trucks to drive through. It was at that point they began finding the first evidence, because along one of the main passageways were hundreds of bags of German currency stacked against the walls. Farther into the mine, they found rooms and tunnels filled with boxes and crates. Some contained paintings. The American officers were then led to a chamber designated Room Number 8. The entrance had been sealed behind a thick brick wall. Fearing that the steel door in the wall was booby-trapped, the Americans brought in explosives, and a hole next to the door in the wall was blown open. Part of the Crawford report had this map, this sketch, if you will, of the particular vault, room number 8. And you can see here at the bottom, this is the entrance. You see pictures of this, and here is the barred gate. They blast a hole in the wall, and here you see a soldier coming through the hole. And I thought this was actually to the right of the door going into the vault. Actually, it's not, and here's how you know. Going back to the diagram, here is the entrance. So here's the gate, brick wall right here. But then look, to the left, that is the entrance to vault by U.S. Army. This is where the hole was blasted in. It was actually blasted to the left of the door. So this image here is actually taken from inside the vault, showing the hole on the right side. Yeah, so the picture here taken from the inside, here's the hole from the right side. So that explains how this picture works. Behind the demolished wall was a vault covering more than 11,000 square feet. The floor was covered with thousands of bags. There were bags stacked in rows, bags piled against the walls, and then boxes, trunks, and containers filling almost every available space. And when the Americans began opening them, that's when they found gold. More than 8,000 gold bars. Dozens of boxes containing additional gold bullion. Hundreds of bags filled with gold and silver coins. Foreign currencies from countries across Europe. And there were bags and boxes containing billions of German Reichmarks. The estimated value ran into hundreds of millions of dollars in 1945. In modern terms, the contents of the mine would be worth billions. This is the vault itself. looking from the door and the hole they blasted in, looking to the back, and you've got all these bags, tracks through the middle, boxes. So we're going to figure out what all this stuff is. Here you've got the tracks for the carts, okay? On the right-hand side, gold coins in bags. And on the left-hand side, bags of miscellaneous gold currency, which is right here. Reichsbank notes in boxes along the walls. That means tracks right here. These bags, according to that diagram, all filled with gold coins. In the middle of the vault, if these are the gold coins, this is 27 rows of gold bars. That's what this middle section is right here. Okay, here are the cart tracks. And then on this side of the vault, you've got boxes of Reichsbank notes, 75,000 notes per box. And then more boxes, Reichsbank notes. I think it's 5 million per box. More notes back here. So going back to the picture, you've got the boxes that we were talking about, Reich marks in these boxes here, bags piled up behind the boxes, and then way back here, more boxes with Reich marks in it. Gold bars and gold coins on this side, all of the paper currency, except up front, there were more coins, but back here is the bulk of the paper currency, okay? Here's another great image. Sergeant being recorded counting Reichsbank notes. If he's standing at these boxes counting, that means he's standing in this section right here. I love this picture right here. The officer isn't identified, but he's clearly holding a gold bar. Those boxes where that sergeant was counting the currency is behind him. So I think this guy was possibly sitting either in this section here with the boxes behind him, or possibly in this section here with the camera taking the image here with these boxes behind him. I actually think he's on the left-hand side of the tracks with the boxes behind him, and he's just holding a gold bar. So I think he's in this section, just sitting in this section right here with these boxes behind him. But the gold bars were not the most disturbing discovery inside room number 8, because in one section of the vault, the Americans found suitcases filled with personal valuables. Wedding rings, watches, jewelry, silverware, gold fillings, and dental work. These did not come from a government treasury. They had been taken from people imprisoned and murdered by the Nazi regime. This picture right here, Eisenhower, Bradley behind him. Here's Patton over here. How do I know? Fur collar. And look at that, revolver in a holster. So that's obviously one of his pearl-handled revolvers. This is Patton. But what are they looking at? Going through, obviously, a suitcase of personal possessions that had been taken from citizens, definitely entering into concentration camps. And how do we know that? Well, here's the story of the cases. Let's get oriented. You see behind them the train tracks. You can barely make them out in that dark shadow, but the tracks are definitely there. Closer up, obviously, here's the cavern wall. The boxes filled with all of those banknotes. More bags right here. Boxes of Reichsbank notes here. Reichsbank notes, 1 million Reichsmarks per box, and that's in this section here. And then over here, gold and silverware in suitcases. That's what this label says. Gold and silverware in suitcases. And you see just a gathering of suitcases in the back. Now, let's go to that picture of the vault. Tracks, this is from the front. Tracks, we know the gold bars and gold coins were on the right. Reichsbank notes on the left. And you see more boxes towards the back. And here are all of those suitcases right there. This is where that image was taken. Matter of fact, you can kind of see this might have been that setup where that photo was taken. This is what we're going to concentrate on. Going back to that picture, Eisenhower's going through the suitcase. This is where those boxes were, and you can see all the other suitcases, or at least some of them. But there's another picture. Here's a still image of an army officer going through one of the suitcases, jewelry, cigarette cases, valuables, but look behind him. All of the other suitcases are there. So this is where he was standing. He was standing right here. All the other suitcases are behind him, which means the cart tracks were like going to start like right over here. So he was standing at the back of the vault right in front of all of those suitcases, and he's going through the valuables that were obviously stolen from anyone that was taken to the concentration camps. Now, as the story goes, these cases here were actually delivered to the Reichsbank from the SS, and all of these cases were labeled with one name, and that name was Melmer. It was a SS officer by the name of Captain Bruno Melmer, and he made all of these deliveries to the Reichsbank. It would get melted down, it would get sold, and once those transactions took place, the proceeds from the sale of either the melted down gold or the sale of this jewelry, it was credited to the account of a guy by the name of Max Heiliger. And Max Heiliger was the code name for Heinrich Himmler, who was in charge of the SS. So by early 1945, much of the loot that had been stolen or confiscated in the concentration camps and deposited into the Reichsbank had been processed, but a significant amount still had yet to be processed, and that's what we see right here. Elsewhere in the mine, the Americans discovered another kind of treasure. German museum officials had moved part of the collections of 14 major Prussian state museums into Merkers. The works had been sent underground to protect them from the bombing of Berlin. Among the recognizable paintings was Edward Manet's In the Conservatory. On April 12th, some of the most powerful commanders in the Allied war effort arrived at Merkers. General Dwight Eisenhower entered the mine, accompanied by General Omar Bradley and General George Patton. But the Americans could not leave the treasure there. You see, Merkers was located inside territory that would eventually be handed over to the Soviet Union. So the race was now on to remove everything. The operation required hundreds of soldiers, trucks, and guards. The gold, currency, and valuables were brought through the tunnels on carts. And from there, the treasure was placed aboard guarded army trucks. The convoys traveled to Frankfurt, where the contents were deposited inside the Reichsbank building. Every bag, bar, and box had to be documented. The artwork required specialists who could identify, pack, and transport fragile objects without causing further damage. The monetary gold was later returned to the nations from which they had been taken. But restitution was never simple. Gold had been melted down and combined with other gold. Documentation had been destroyed. And finally, thousands of stolen works of art remained missing. Now, the discovery at Merkers is often described as the finding of Nazi gold. But that description does not fully explain what the Americans encountered underground. because Merkers was several discoveries hidden inside one mine. First, it was the reserve of a collapsing government. It was a shelter for some of Germany's greatest museum collections. And of course, it was a warehouse of stolen European wealth. Finally, it was a crime scene, containing the last personal possessions of people who had vanished inside the Nazi camp system. The Germans had chosen Merkers because they believed its size, depth, and secrecy would protect everything placed inside it, and it might have worked. However, the secret was uncovered because soldiers listened to rumors. Intelligence officers continued asking questions. And of course, two women walking to see a midwife answered a driver's casual question. And while the gold discovered inside the mine was eventually counted, weighed, and removed, a larger mystery has never been completely solved. Now, it's estimated that Nazi Germany stole nearly $600 million worth. This is in 1945 dollars. Nearly $600 million worth of gold during the course of World War II. So here's the mystery. The hoard found at the Kaiserota mine at Merkers was valued at approximately $250 million at the time, which was less than half the total amount stolen by the Nazis. So where is the rest of it? Now, if you like World War II mysteries like this one, then I hope you'll consider subscribing to History X. Click the like button because we've got plenty more videos like this one for you.